Sometimes I feel like I'm just existing. I'm not really living. I'm only watching the time slip away. I've forgotten who I am in you. I'm not who I'm meant to be. No, no. I'm drifting farther away from my destiny.
Welcome. My name is Gail Nordskog, and the name of our show is Awaken Hearts of Purpose and Passion. Today, my guest is Rebecca Friday, whom I have known off and on over the years, probably for about 10 years, but I don't know her full story, and she's got a story to share with us that I know will inspire you to do great things with God and for God. So, Rebecca, hi.
Hi. Nice to be here with you, Gail.
Yeah, I am so glad you were able to come. One thing Rebecca and I have in common is that we both did a class called The Perspective on the World Christian Movement. Do you want to share really quickly what you're experiencing there at the course this year?
Yes, it's a wonderful class, Gail. It's a class about the world Christian movement from the beginning of Christian history in the Bible from the time of Abraham. And I have been a student of the Bible for about 40 years, but it's been real eye-opening, and I look at the Bible and I read it differently now. It just has so much more meaning. I can look at the genealogies and get stuff out of the genealogies that I never thought were there before. I recommend it to anybody who's interested in missions.
And basically, Becky, the bottom line is that this is about missions.
It is.
That God is a missionary God, and He sends people out on mission for His glory.
Exactly.
Which you've already been doing. And that's really what I want to get at, is what you've been doing over the past number of years in Honduras.
Well, actually, it started in Guatemala in 1989, and that was my first mission trip, and missions is just so exciting. A friend of mine, this is a little odd, but a friend of mine told me she had written her own obituary, and that she thinks everyone should write their own obituary. And I started thinking, what in my life is worth even writing down? And I live a pretty ordinary, boring life. I'm a school teacher, but anything that's been exciting and worthy of writing about has been what I've done in missions. And I've just done little short-term mission trips, things that are maybe a month long. My first mission trip was 11 days long, and I went to Guatemala in 1989. And I think people should go on mission trips for the right reasons, and that probably wasn't the right reason. I tend to be kind of an impulsive person, and I went for the excitement. In 1989, Guatemala was still in the middle of a civil war. They were warning Americans not to go to Guatemala. Why not to go? I did. I had 3 kids at home. Okay. My mother did not want me to go. My family was fine with it. And I went there with a couple. She was Guatemalan, grew up in Guatemala, and her husband was an American who had gone there, and they had met. And the first day we went, and I knew we were going, we went to the Guatemala City dump. Google it sometime. It's...
Aren't there children there all the time that pretty much live there? And
you know, honestly, it's the closest that you can get to hell on earth. The scientists don't even know why people can live there. There are, it's literally like hell. There are fires that just break out spontaneously from the methane gas and the layers of just garbage and everything that's there. It's a horrendous place, and I knew we were going to be going to the dump. I had this picture in my mind when I was a little girl. I spent time in Wisconsin. We used to go to the dump and watch the bears and rummaging through the garbage for food, and it was nothing like that. Nothing grows in this dump. I saw children rummaging through the garbage for bits of food and recyclables to sell. It was just a horrendous place. In fact, a very unsafe place. The police at that time didn't go there. And they packed like 15 of us into this 12-passenger van. Mm-hmm. And first day, drove right into the city dump. Right in the middle, we got stuck in the mud. the van could not move. It was just like one of the scariest things I ever experienced. And so we opened the doors and got out and started pushing, and the van trying to get out of this muck and garbage. And then we looked around and we noticed there were some men, a group of men walking toward us, and it was pretty scary. And they pushed us out. They pushed us out, and we got out. God takes care of fools who go into scary, dangerous situations. And
what had been your original purpose to go? Were you going to share the gospel? Were you going to rescue some of these children? What were you hoping to do?
Well, we had two purposes. One, we were going to help a widow named Margarita. She had 12 kids, lived in a tiny little one-room shack, and we were going there to do a room addition that she could use to rent out for income. Mm-hmm. We were also going there to help an American who had gone to Guatemala City to have a ministry to the children of the Guatemala City dump. And as a result had established a school and ended up taking in some children and was also running an orphanage. She had a handful of kids that actually slept there and lived there at the school.
Okay, so your intentions were very good.
They were, but it wasn't, missions is, it's going out on a limb. It's not something that you do without counting the costs.
And you felt you didn't count the costs at that time?
I didn't. It seemed really exciting to go to a country in the middle of a civil war and just kind of do something crazy. And I've always loved travel and adventure. But I learned missions is not something for the faint-hearted.
There's a preparation time, I think.
There is definitely. In fact, Gail, I love the verse in James about what pure religion it is to go and minister to widows and orphans. Mm-hmm. But this summer, I'm planning a mission trip this summer as well. And the verse that God has been bringing to my mind is the one in Ephesians 6:16 and 17 about the preparation that you do for a mission trip. You put on the shield of faith to extinguish the fiery darts that are going to be coming at you, and they do. And you grab the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, and you put on the helmet of salvation. I love that imagery, the helmet. I grew up in a family that liked to ride motorcycles and do crazy things like that. And
so it runs in your blood.
It does. But you put on the helmet and you protect yourself. You prepare before you go. You get people praying for you. You do a lot of preparation before you go. I don't recommend mission trips for brand new Christians.
All right. So you came back from this trip knowing that next time you're not going to do it this way. What was your next experience in missions?
Well, I've gone as an English as a second language teacher. That's
to
kind
where?
of
What country?
I've been to El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Belize.
Okay. And Honduras is the place that you seem to have stayed with because it's going back.
It is. I kind of got stuck there. I got associated with a small orphanage there. And totally different. I have a very clear calling about going there this summer. In fact, I think every Christian would love a sign from God. We all want some. I mean, we operate
or a
on
loud
faith.
Voice.
Or a loud voice, yeah. But I actually got a sign from God. I originally went to this little island for a vacation. I'd been on the mainland at one of I think they have hundreds of orphanages in Honduras. I went there to get scuba certified with my son. And the morning that I left, I went out on the beach, and this complete stranger told me that I should come back there and teach English as a second language and work with the orphans. He told me they had 2 orphanages there. And I thought it was the craziest thing I had ever heard.
What year was that?
This was about 6 years ago.
Okay.
And I completely discounted it. I didn't think any more about it because it's a beautiful island where the orphanages are located. No, but it's where I had been. It was really a nice island. And I had been to so many miserable places, really horrible places. And I didn't think God could, why would anyone go there to a beautiful place like that to be a missionary? Anyway, I came home. I'm a school teacher. I went driving up the hill my first day back, teacher's first day back to school, and right in front of me was this SUV that had a vanity plate, capital letters, R-O-A-T-A-N, Roatan. and most people have never heard of the island. I followed them, up the hill to my school. She pulled in my school parking lot, got a really interesting story about this woman who had been to this island, and long story short, her daughter ended up in my first grade class, and there was just a connection made, and I feel like I got my sign from God.
I think that's a great sign. That is, I have never heard of Roatan. My father was actually born, he's an American, but he was born in Honduras. And so I have a real heart for Honduras, and someday, if God allows, I am going to go and help with the orphans there.
I'm going to hold you to it, Gail.
Please do, I want to. And he lived there the first 10 years of his life. His dad ran a banana plantation. And they were very poor. It was during the Depression, so it was an interesting time, but my heart is with that island. So
it is a very interesting island. The history is really interesting. It's just kind of complex, and I know what your father was a part of. There was an industry, the whole Banana Republic thing. It started on the island. It's kind of moved more to the mainland. They're not doing that now, but he was an interesting part of their history.
Yes. Yeah, I'd like to learn more about it. It'd be great. Now, you have had some other adventures. You had your scariest adventure. Then there was a heartwarming adventure. Do you want to share that story?
I have had a lot of heartwarming adventures. I think I'm going to try and tell you one of the most heartbreaking adventures I've had. I originally went there, the first time I went there on a mission trip, I went there to teach English as a second language. Many of the people there want to learn English. There were like over 60 people who signed up for the classes. They asked me to come and teach us. It was kind of to bring people into the church so that they could hear about the gospel. And I had this little small room. It had maybe a half dozen people in each class, but one class, I had only one student. It was the only class that I had one student. She was very advanced in English, and so she was the only person in my class. And I said to her, Maria, what do you want me to help you with? And she was very pregnant, and she said, you know what, I'd like to write a letter to my baby.
Aww.
I would like to tell him all the hopes and desires that I have for his life. She attended the church. Many of the people weren't, but she was a Christian. And so we wrote a letter, this beautiful letter, and all of these things that she wanted him to be. She wanted him to grow up. And actually, I don't think she told me she knew it was a boy, but they don't have good medical help there for the women. She hadn't really had adequate prenatal help. So we wrote this long letter, though, to her, who she thought was her son. And when we were finished, it took us a while, a couple of classes to do it. After we'd finished that night, she went into premature labor a couple weeks early, and she lost the baby.
Oh.
And there on the island, it's a developing nation, and they don't have the kind of invisible death we have here, where we really don't experience the reality of death. They do there. The people in the church actually made the coffin for the baby. It was such a large baby that they had to make one that was larger. And needless to say, she was heartbroken. And I just had that strong sense, even at the time. That was my main reason for being there. When I went there, I didn't realize that. But afterward, I went to her home and prayed with her. And she was, hurting physically. I massaged her. It was just, that's probably the biggest heartbreaker.
Yes, yeah. Do you have a most cherished memory?
I do, but you have to promise you won't ask me to sing. I'm not a good singer, but I think the reason why I really got hooked on this small orphanage in Honduras is just that it's been abandoned and abused.
And let's talk specifically about this particular orphanage that you go to. Why do you go? What do you do when you're there besides singing to these little children and loving them? You were drawn there to give respite care, basically, to the people that live there and train up these children, and the house parents, I guess they would be called.
Yes, that's the bottom line mission. The board of directors wants the house parents, there are actually house parents, and then an older teenage girl that also helps. They want them to be able to leave twice a year for a week for rest and recuperation. And so we kind of go in and take over the place.